Hours ahead of the Union Budget 25-26, we are at NDTV joined by somebody who's not only a noted industrialist, distinguished industrialist of the country, but somebody who has been closely associated with the industry body FICCI for well over 2 decades. Mr. Subhrakant Panda, welcome to NDTV.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Panda, let me ask you something to begin with, which is in the top of everyone's minds. And obviously for our viewership, it becomes very, very critical. Do you think, as somebody who has been a very distinguished observer of the union budgets for a very long period of time, that there is enough elbow room with the government to allow some kind of tax concessions to the middle class in particular?
So Nikunj, let me actually answer it from a different perspective, which is, budget is a very important exercise. But what we need to keep in mind is that governance is a year-long or year-round process rather. And what I think we are seeing is a lot of confidence in this government about India's growth prospects, about how the economy has been handled. And to get to the specific question that you asked, I think good fiscal management has resulted in the Indian economy being in a strong position. What is, of course, a matter of concern are the external factors, whether it is the geopolitical conflicts or other things, which we have to keep in mind and be aware of that while formulating policy. Now, specifically when it comes to any tax concessions, etc., there is always a bit of give and take in every budget. But I think given where we are at the moment, which is that though growth has moderated a little bit, but there is a very strong optimism about India's future growth trajectory. And at the same time, I think, looking at how particularly urban consumption, etc., has panned out, I think there is a requirement to put more money in people's hands. So whether that is by way of, tax concessions or, increase in the slab or something of that sort, that is certainly something that we are looking forward to. But in addition to the fiscal policy, I think there is an element of monetary policy as well, which is, of course, not part of the budget. But, going ahead, one is looking at rate cuts coming into play this year, which will also, I think, aid the growth prospects of the Indian economy.
Mr. Panda, now, of course, we've seen that tepid growth, and you say that there is a need for more money into the hands for the consumption purposes. I also want you to don the other hat that you wear, which is the MD of the IMFA. And from the side of the industry, obviously there are some results that have come in, whether it is HUL, whether it is HDFC, whether it is some other results, which are not very exciting, one would say. Obviously there is some positive growth, but they are not very exciting results. Some others can also be positive, which may not, we may not have them currently on the table. However, do you think from the industry side also a slightly more momentum is required as far as the consumption demand is concerned?
So, when you talk about the results of individual companies or indeed even sectors, what one has to keep in mind that there are various factors at play, and many sectors, let's say especially metals and mining sector, which is what I represent, go through cycles. So there are a lot of factors which need to be kept in mind. But yes, I think the core point which I was trying to make is that there is I think, a little bit of impetus which is required to be given to the growth trajectory. I think by and large, we are on the right path. Some tapering off of growth has happened, but that is more to do with external factors and instead of really internal. But yes, I think what we're looking is both a boost to consumption through, through more money in people's hand, as I said, and something which the government did very well, particularly during the COVID period, which is to do the heavy lifting through public capex. I think that is where FICCI suggestions of a 15% increase to the capital expenditure budget in going ahead is something that we're looking forward to, because that will sort of give the momentum to the Indian economy at this point in time. Having said that, I think it is also important to keep in mind that private investment needs to come in. I believe that is happening. It may not be extremely broad based, because again, different sectors have their different cycles in terms of where they are for growth, consumption, etc. But I think a bit of momentum provided by the government through an increase in the capex budget will go a long way in imparting momentum.
Well, actually, you touched upon the topic that I wanted to talk in the latter half of your answer, and that was about private capex, because the government has always been, sort of pushing for it. In fact, traditionally, all governments have pushed. It's nothing particular to this government that private industry, private capex has to come in. But let me ask you a different question then, and that question is about Mr. Trump and the Trump tariff tracker, if one can put it like that. One may look at it like a threat looming large, or one may look at it like an opportunity to reconfigure your the ways of conducting business, particularly with the US. How do you see that? Will that also have a shadow on the budget, particularly the fact that our IT industry is very closely intertwined, and IT is a very big sector. It's a very closely intertwined industry with the American industry and overall American economic saga.
So, in short, what I believe is that the administration may have changed in the US, but particularly when you look at bilateral relationships, especially something as significant as the India-US relationship, these really need to be looked at from a long-term perspective and not a very short-term outlook. Having said that, different administrations, different governments have their own policies, their own priorities, their own expectations, and one has to maneuver around that carefully. I think from an Indian perspective, I clearly see it as an opportunity. And you have had very senior figures in our government exude confidence that the US-India relationship is on a very strong footing, and we certainly have more to gain than many nations. Will there have to be some concessions on some fronts? Of course, because again, bilateral relationships are never one way. They're always a bit of give and take. But I think both India and the US can work together in a manner which is in alignment with the long-term priorities, the strategic nature of the relationship, and iron out whatever little niggles there are. So, will there be some specific measures in this regard in the budget? I won't be able to comment on that, and I don't think it's also prudent to dive into that much depth into a budget analysis. But to the broader question of how India sees the Trump administration, or how India Inc. sees the Trump administration, I believe there is a lot of opportunity which will come India's way that we can encash.
And at least on the day that I sit to ask you this question, Mr. Panda, this interview would not be complete. And this is, of course, my last question also, because I want to keep it brief. My last question to you is also about the AI. It is as if, it's all around us and it's now exploding. Americans probably have got the first real challenge coming from the Chinese on that front. And a very large section of the body of Indian industry, Indian trade, Indian commerce, is also now urging the government to put the money where the mouth is and ensure AI funding. Some commentators are saying there should be a dedicated ministry for the AI. Of course, that's not something that the budget will look into. It's not in its purview. But as far as funding is concerned, that quite clearly is the ambit, comes in the remit of the budget. So would you also think, somebody who has been very closely associated with an industry body like FICCI, that we now need to get extremely serious about the funding of the AI, both in the government as well as the private sector?
So, AI is an all-encompassing term, but when we look at technology, innovation, yes, these are the areas of the future. And I believe there has already been quite a bit of focus on on how India can be ahead of the curve when it comes to these critical areas. But you're absolutely right that in this budget, in subsequent budgets, we need to put our money where our mouth is and prioritize technology, prioritize innovation, prioritize artificial intelligence. There is a lot of hype and hoopla about the disruptive element of AI. But I believe that what we as a nation, what the world at large stands to gain from AI is far more than whatever short-term disruptions in a sort of a negative manner that may be there. But the long-term positive disruption is hugely beneficial. And for that, India has the right, sort of set of circumstances where we have a young population in a context where the rest of the world is aging. And I think and we have, of course, have a background of software and all of that, which sort of puts us in the right mindset to take it forward. And we certainly need to invest in our people, invest in new technologies, invest in AI to ensure that we are ahead of the curve and stand to benefit not just ourselves, but for greater global good.
Mr. Subhrakant Panda, as always, a very erudite and all-encompassing, comprehensive speaker. Thank you very much for joining NDTV.
My pleasure. Thank you.